Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary folks. Today I have a video for you that's about all the trans tropes that I really like. These are tropes I have seen in manga, anime, and even a few books, and I honestly think they are really good. First off, there is a trope I feel is used a lot in webtoons and across many manga and anime, being assigned a different gender at birth for political reasons. Some examples I will mention are Osora, the Rose of Versailles, and other series that do this, like, for example, all of the ones I mentioned. But yeah, there is also a book called She Who Became the Sun that includes this kind of representation too. Basically, I think there is something unspeakably iconic about being so important, so woven into the fabric of your country or world, that your gender is assigned not based on your own identity, but on politics. Personally, this resonates with me because it mirrors how people debate about gender in real life. Some say you shouldn't assign gender to babies and should let them decide when they are older, while others insist kids need to be raised according to the gender assigned to them at birth. I honestly think things will be so much easier if all babies were just given they them pronouns until they figure it out themselves or something like that. Maybe there is a better solution, but for the time being, that's what I think. In these kinds of anime, the gender assignment is often engraved into the character's life, so when they grow up, their ideology has shifted, it causes conflict. One example is Osora, who doesn't even understand why he's treated differently until he grows up. Then he realizes he's basically not perceived like the other boys, and it starts to bother him. He even worries people will start seeing him differently just because he's not the same. I really like how that portrays something close to being non-binary in a stable and grounded way. Another example is the Rose of Versailles. In this anime, Oscar is born female but raised as a man to serve in the royal guard. Technically, she's not claiming to be a man, but she performs masculinity as a part of her role. Even though this was done because of the misogyny of the era, I still think it's a powerful example of how gender can be fluid and how it's often tied to roles and expectations, not just identity. And lastly, She Who Became the Sun tells the story of someone assigned female at birth who takes on her brother's name and destiny after his death. She pretends to be a man to survive and gain power. Later in the story, I think in the second book, they begin using they pronouns because gender no longer matters to them. I love how this trope takes the classic gender disguise idea and reclaims it through a trans lens. It becomes a story about navigating power, performance, and identity. Sometimes the role you are forced to play gives you the tools to become even more yourself. Now for the second trope, the non-binary pansexual awakening. I really love this one because it explores two different identities at once, not just gender but sexuality too. And I think that's even better. It's like when you meet someone who makes you question everything you thought you knew, because they don't fit into the categories you were used to, and suddenly you realize your entire framework needs adjusting. One example is the name Stars Align, which is technically about tennis, but it includes a character named Yu. They are non-binary and like to dress feminine sometimes, but don't identify it strictly as male or female. Another example is Yuka from Blue Period. She talks to the main character about her identity, how she doesn't really care how others label her, but she enjoys being feminine and expressing herself that way. It feels very gender fluid, and I love the way the protagonist's perception of her shifts, how he starts to really see her differently. And then there is Boy Meets Maria. In this manga, a boy falls in love with a supposedly girl he sees performing, but later he finds out she's not a girl, she's actually a boy. And to make it even more complicated, that boy was raised as a girl because of his mother's obsession with femininity. That word. This left him feeling really insecure about who he was. Later we see him exploring his gender in a more fluid way. He even says he doesn't get why people are always trying to pin him down. He just wants to exist as himself. And that moment really stuck with me because I feel like that's something we as queer community feel. Not maybe with other labels, maybe with other gender expressions, but it's something real that we struggle with daily. And yeah, that's just it. Another trope I love is the one where a character is reincarnated into another gender. For example, in Tanya the Evil, you have this adult man who dies and is reincarnated as a little girl in a completely different world. It's not played as a trans story directly, but I think it still reflects something about gender dysphoria, how strange and alien it can feel to live in a body that doesn't match your mind. What I love is that Tanya has to learn how different the world treats her now that she's a girl, and how she navigates power, identity, and control in this new form. This trope also shows up in Heavenly Delusion, where a boy undergoes brain surgery and ends up in the body of a girl. Yes, it's weird and yes, it's complicated, but it does explore how gender identity works when it's disconnected from physical form. It makes you think about what makes someone who they truly are. And finally, just to close this up, it's my favorite trope, that it's the T4D relationship. This is when two trans characters, whether trans, mass, trans, femme, or non-binary, go through gender discovery together. Sometimes they fall in love, sometimes they're just supporting each other through it. Either way, it's totally beautiful. A good example of this is Wandering Sun, and even though I don't have a ton of examples, that one showed me how powerful it is to have someone to rely on during your gender journey. Someone who gets it, someone who understands dysphoria and euphoria. It's not just about being trans, it's about being seen fully by someone who's walking a similar path. These tropes don't just include us, they celebrate us, they send a message, and I think we deserve to see more of them in queer media. Especially when trans representation is still way behind compared to lesbian or gay characters. So yeah, that's it. Those are the trans tropes I will die for. If you have a favorite, or if there is an anime or manga you think I should check out, drop it in the comments. I love to hear it from you. And that's basically all. Also, I just wanted to make like a little bit of notice for everyone. Even though I'm not part of the trans community myself, I have always felt a deep connection and respect for it. As a lesbian who grew up in a conservative household, I have faced my share of struggles, but I also recognize that what the trans community faces on a daily basis is an entirely different way. That doesn't mean it's a competition, it just means I see you and I truly care for you. Gender is something fluid, something deeply internal, and sometimes painfully misunderstood. When the world's image of you doesn't match the truth you carry inside, it creates a tension I think more people need to acknowledge with empathy and respect, especially people from the queer community. This post is inspired by stories that touch me, like She Who Became the Sun, Boy Meets Maria, Stars Align, and Blue Period. They help shape the way I see gender, identity, and transformation. These tropes might seem silly, but to me they carry something tender, affirming, and quietly revolutionary. This might be weird for someone who is not inside the trans community to wholly understand, but I love doing this type of videos because I love to share my opinion on the LGBTQ plus community. I just wanted you to know that I love you if you're trans, like I really care for you and I hope things get better. You deserve better and I hope we all do more to make that happen.